Our activity analysis is over TikTok dancing. TikTok is an app that's got increasingly popular over the past few years. Many people within our selected age group, 13 to 22-year-olds, participate in the dancing trends that are on this app. The trends consist of simple choreography to a popular song. Creators on the app mimic the dance and record and share within the community.
Noise when the sun goes down on my side of town. That lonesome feeling comes to my door. The whole world turns.
At the head and neck, both extension and rotation to the left side are being performed. Extension is being performed at the atlanto-occipital joint, and the prime movers for that motion are the upper trapezius and the splanus capitis. Rotation to the left side is a more primary motion in this area. This is occurring at the atlanto-axial joint, which is a pivot joint that has 1 degree of freedom. The prime movers here is going to be the contralateral sternocleidomastoid. At the shoulder, we're going to break it into the left and right sides. On his left side, abduction is being performed. This is occurring at the glenohumeral joint, which is the main shoulder joint. This is a ball and socket joint, and it's going to have 3 degrees of freedom. The prime mover for abduction is going to be middle deltoid and your supraspinatus muscles. On the right side, horizontal adduction and internal rotation are both occurring by the glenohumeral joint. The prime movers for horizontal adduction are going to be the pectoralis major and the coracobrachialis, and the prime movers for internal rotation are going to be the subscapularis and the teres major. At the scapula, we'll also break it into the left and right sides. On his left side, elevation and upward rotation are both occurring. Elevation occurs at the acromioclavicular joint, which is a gliding joint with 2 degrees of freedom, and the prime movers for elevation are going to be the upper trapezius and the levator scapula. Upward rotation occurs by the lower trapezius and the serratus anterior, and because shoulder abduction is also occurring, scapular humeral rhythm is in play, which is a 2-to-1 ratio. It's going to increase your range of motion. On the right side, both depression and protraction are occurring. Depression is also going to occur at the acromioclavicular joint, gliding joint with 2 degrees of freedom. Prime mover here is going to be trapezius and your pectoralis minor, and this is an eccentric or lengthening contraction. Protraction is also going to occur via the serratus anterior muscle.
So the trunk consists of 24 vertebrae that make up the spine. They're specifically the cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, and lumbar vertebrae. And then there's the sacrum and coccyx these vertebrae. They're specifically fascious joints that we think of in different joints. Vertebrae, there's inferior and superior that meet, and these are a hinge joint on 2 degrees of freedom. In the video, the participant is seen upholding an upright posture. This is allowed for by the joints and muscles of the trunk, as well as the core. Prime muscles that allow for this type of postural control are the abdominalis, perispinals, glutes, diaphragm, pelvic floor muscles, and hip muscles. With these muscles at work allowing for postural control, the center of mass can be moved within the body during specific movements with various support between the feet and the ground to maintain balance. The center of mass is just considered where the mass of a person is concentrated. We really have many different centers of mass in our body, but the main one that we think of is right above the belly button. The base of support is how wide the feet are apart from one another. Feet can be positioned to have a wider base of support, and this allows for better control. People with balance issues typically need a wider base of support, and women maintain or walkers would help with that.
Since our participant is in a standing position, the ankles are dorsiflexed in this frame. Dorsiflexion is the most stable position of the ankle. The prime movers for dorsiflexion are the tibialis anterior and the extensor digitorum longus. This type of contraction would be an isometric contraction because the muscles are staying at an equal length. The ankle is composed of 3 articulations: talocrural, subtalar, and intertarsal joints. The talocrural is considered the true ankle joint and is a hinge joint. A hinge joint allows 1 degree of freedom. This is a closed kinetic chain because our participants' distal ends of the limbs, ankles, and feet remain fixed in a standing position. Throughout this video, our participant is bouncing in and out of a squat position. In this segment of the video we are analyzing, his knees are in a slightly flexed position. The muscles that allow this flexion are the hamstring muscles. This type of contraction is a concentric contraction because the hamstring muscles are shortening. This group includes the prime movers, which are the semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and the bicep femoris. The knee is a modified hinge joint, which allows extension, flexion, and some medial and lateral rotation. It has 1 degree of freedom. At the front of the knee joint, the patella acts as a fulcrum for the quadricep groups, providing increasing leverage and increasing strength. The ACL, PCL, MCL, and LCL help stabilize the knee in place. Since our participant is in a standing position, the ankles are dorsiflexed in this frame. Dorsiflexion is the most stable position of the ankle. The prime movers for dorsiflexion are the tibialis anterior and the extensor digitorum longus. This type of contraction would be an isometric contraction because the muscles are staying at an equal length. The ankle is composed of 3 articulations: talocrural, subtalar, and intertarsal joints. The talocrural is considered the true ankle joint and is a hinge joint. A hinge joint allows 1 degree of freedom. This is a closed kinetic chain because our participants' distal ends of the limbs, ankles, and feet remain fixed in a standing position.
The elbow has 2 joints that allow for movement of elbow flexion and extension to occur. These are the humeroradial and the humeroulnar. At the humeroradial joint, this is considered a gliding type joint, which has 1 degree of freedom. Humeroulnar joint is a hinge joint with 1 degree of freedom. In the video, the participant can be seen with his right elbow flexed to a 90-degree angle and his left elbow extended completely. The prime movers allowing for elbow flexion include the biceps brachialis and the brachialis. The prime mover allowing for left elbow extension is the triceps brachialis. Both of these muscles are performing concentric contractions. The forearm has 2 joints that allow for pronation and supination of the forearm to occur. These are the proximal and distal radial ulnar joints. Proximal radial ulnar joint is classified as a pivot joint with 1 degree of freedom. The distal radial ulnar joint is classified as a pivot as well. In the video, the participant can be seen with his right and left forearm pronate. Prime movers allowing for pronation of the left and right forearm include the pronator quadratus and the pronator teres. The pronator quadratus is located more distally, and the pronator teres is located laterally. These prime movers are an example of concentric contraction.
In our video, the wrists can be seen moving in extension and in flexion, but in the screenshot that we studied, the left wrist was in neutral and the right wrist was held in extension. The wrists are condyloid synovial joints with 2 degrees of freedom. This allows for flexion, extension, abduction, and adduction. There are 4 prime movers in the wrist: the flexor carpi radialis, the flexor carpi ulnaris, the extensor carpi radialis longus, and the extensor carpi ulnaris. The flexors, the flexor carpi ulnaris and flexor carpi radialis, are responsible for flexion. The extensors, extensor carpi radialis longus and extensor carpi ulnaris, are responsible for extension. The radialis muscles, the flexor carpi radialis as well as the extensor carpi radialis longus, are responsible for abduction, radial deviation. And the ulnaris muscles, the flexor carpi ulnaris and the flexor extensor carpi ulnaris, are responsible for a deduction, which is also known as ulnar deviation. The metacarpal phalangeal joints, the MCPs, the proximal interphalangeal joints, the PIPs, and distal interphalangeal joints, the PIPs, make up all the knuckles on the fingers. And in the video, there's a lot of finger movement, there's a lot of flexion, there's a lot of extension, there's a lot of abduction and adduction, but in the scene that we analyzed, the fingers are held apart just a little bit, so we think that's more relaxed, but if there's anything going on, there's abduction at the MCPs, and then the fingers are extended with just a little bit of flexion, and we think that's more because of the lack of firing from the extensors than firing from the flexors. The MCPs are multi-axial condylid joints with 2 degrees of freedom that allow for flexion, extension, adduction, abduction, and some circumduction. The PIPs and DIPs are both hinge joints with 1 degree of freedom that allow for flexion and extension. The prime movers for MCP extension is going to be your extensor digitorum for all 4 of them, your extensor indicis for your 2nd digit only, and extensor digiti minimi for your 5th digit only. The MCP flexion is going to be your lumbricals and flexor digitorum profundus. Your MCP adduction, bringing all the fingers towards the 3rd digit, is going to be your palma interossei. And MCP abduction, bringing your 2nd and 4th digit away from your 3rd digit and moving the 3rd digit radially and ulnarly, is going to be your dorsal interossei. And then to bring the 5th digit away from the 3rd digit is going to be your abductor digiti minimi. PIP and DIP extension are all the same muscles. It's going to be your lumbricals, extensor digitorum, extensor indicis affecting only the 2nd digit, and the extensor digiti minimi affecting the 5th digit. PIP flexion is going to be your flexor digitorum superficialis, and your DIP flexion is going to be your flexor digitorum profundus. The thumb is a bit more special than your fingers. That's why we chose to do a different slide. The thumb is comprised of the carpal metacarpal joint, the CMC, the metacarpal phalangeal joint, the MCP, and the interphalangeal joint, the IP. In the scene that we analyzed, the thumb is held close to the hand and radial adduction, and the tip of the thumb is held in close, so there's a little bit of flexion there. The CMC joint is a saddle joint, which is capable of flexion, extension, abduction, and adduction. And the MCP in the thumb, as well as the IP joint in the thumb, corresponds well with the MCP and the PIP, DIPs in the fingers. The only difference in the IP joint in the thumb is that there's only 2 bones in the thumb instead of 3 in the fingers, so there's no need to differentiate between proximal and distal. The prime movers for the thumb, for CMC adduction, holding the thumb close to the hand, is going to be your adductor pollicis. For the MCP and IP extension, is going to be the extensor pollicis longus. And then for the slight MCP and IP flexion, we're going to have the flexor pollicis longus. For spatial and environmental dimensions for dancing, all you really need is just enough room to move around. That means nothing on the ground that's going to make you trip, such as a loose rug if you're inside, or a pothole in the ground if you're outside. Nothing around you where your head or hands are gonna hit as you're swinging them around. Depending on the type of dancing, the clothing comes into effect. If you're moving fast and aggressive and jerky, you want tight-fitting clothing to avoid catching a finger and hurting your finger. But if you're just doing slow, fluid movements, then it's whatever you want to wear to make you more comfortable.
The temporal dimensions of this occupation are very dependent on the creator. Creators can make TikToks any time of the day and anywhere. TikToks have a maximum video length that is now extended to 10 minutes long, with the platform initially launching video length at 60 seconds. This provides immense flexibility in participation within the platform and its community.
The social dimensions of TikTok are quite powerful in my opinion. Everyone around the world engages in TikTok dances as a way to kind of connect with one another. It can be expression, it can be a way to have fun with friends and family, or you can challenge yourself along with others. A lot of people do TikTok trends and challenges come and go, and it's just a fun way to really just interact with. TikTok dances are really a part of our culture right now, I would say. I feel like it really became big around when COVID hit, and ever since then, everyone's been using it. The age range for people involved goes from adolescents to the older population. And this is just a way to really strengthen your relationships with others and have fun while doing it. Learning a TikTok dance requires different levels of cognition for each person learning it. I would say a beginner might require more attentional demands and more learning involved with certain dance moves, but someone that's more advanced in dancing and TikTok dances may not require as much attention demands in the learning of specific dance moves. Really, the focus on how to do each dance move and just like remembering the procedural steps can also be another cognitive demand. Some people are able to remember the steps more easily, some not. It just really depends on the person.
The sensory dimensions of this activity can be broken down into the 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Sight is going to be the most dominant sensory input in this task. It's required to be able to navigate the app, to watch other creators' choreography, to watch oneself perform the choreography and record oneself, as well as posting it to their page. Hearing is going to be the second most dominant. It's necessary for creating fluidity in the dance movements and synchronicity between the dance and the music. Music often defines the movements in these dances because they are choreographed to trendy, popular songs. So although this isn't completely necessary to participate, it does assist in fluidity of movement. There are many emotional and cultural dimensions to this activity. Dancing can be interpreted as fun, stress-relieving, therapeutic, meditative, expressive, symbolic, or traditional. It's a freedom of expression, and within the TikTok app, it creates a non-judgmental, casual environment where anyone can feel free to participate in this activity. The dances are often created with any intention. This can be fun, this can be therapeutic, this can be traditional. So it can be representative of one's culture and background and symbolic. It can be recreational, a fun way to participate in a group or with oneself in practicing dance, or it can be competitive between creators.
Gender considerations for dance? There is none. Dancing is not restricted to gender or even species, and anyone or anything that wishes to dance can dance. It's like whether it's from a simple head bob or a full blown out choreography, anyone and anything can dance.
TikTok dances could be considered both a social participation and a work participation occupation. Most creators on TikTok make videos for fun and to connect with others, so this would fall under the social participation end. but there are some users who are professional creators, so they get paid through sponsorships to create content for their app. This type of participation would be considered work participation. In the past few years, TikTok has been an ever-growing social media platform. The trending 60-second dance video has made TikTok what it is today. While the app is available for all ages, it is most popular among teenagers and young adults. Outside of TikTok, dancing is found to be a meaningful occupation in many different settings in all different styles. Learning choreographed dances require a certain amount of skill and motor planning. Analyzing this dance has taught us how the joints and muscles work together to make our body move.